Hello, good day, and you're welcome to class. This is PED 130. That's PED 130. That is the philosophy of social studies in Nigeria. Or that think that's just a general philosophy for the subject social studies. Our concern in this class is Unit 3. We've concluded Unit 2 in the last class. We'll talk about the philosophy in Britain, in America, and of course in Africa at large. We also talked briefly about Nigeria. But now we are ready to take a deep look into the philosophical background of social studies in Nigeria. That is all this unit is all about. Also, as a form of introduction to this unit, social studies is not just a subject, where students memorize facts about society. It is designed to prepare people to live, responsibly and successfully in society. So it's not all about going to school and cramming that social studies is the study of that. No, it deals more with preparing people for real life experience, and that's how to live responsibly and successfully in the society. The philosophy behind social studies in Nigeria is based on a very simple idea, and that idea is that education should help to produce good individuals, responsible citizens, and a better society. I will take that again. The philosophy behind social studies in Nigeria is based on a very simple idea, and that idea is that education should help to produce good individuals, responsible citizens, and a better society at large. Now, now, when we teach social studies, we are not only teaching topics such as, trying to teach the student or the pupils family, culture, government, environment, or even economic activities. We are also teaching them, how to behave. That means not just going to be the passive learning. We also teach them how to relate with others, solve problems and contribute positively to Nigeria. Let's take, for example, if we have a child called, let's say, Samuel, and probably Samuel knows the meaning of democracy. Samuel knows Nigeria's ethnic groups that we have. Samuel is able to tell us the importance of environment or the environment. And also, Samuel knows the meaning of citizenship. But if Samuel refuses to respect others, and Samuel is, notorious for destroying maybe public properties, and let's say Samuel discriminates against people from other tribes, and if Samuel refuses to obey the laws of the land, it means that social study hasn't achieved its purpose in Samuel. Yes, Samuel knows the definition of democracy. He knows all the ethnic groups we have in Nigeria. He knows the definition of democracy, but refuses to respect others. He knows all the ethnic groups we have in Nigeria, but discriminate against people from other tribes. Yes, he of course knows the importance of the environment, yet he destroys property. You know, he knows the meaning of citizenship, but he doesn't obey the law of the land. So you see that kind of person is only able to memorize social studies, which is an error that is ongoing in the nation. But the social study is not really effective or affecting the person's behavior or Samuel's behavior. Now, what we're actually trying to say is that, there's this common saying that some people passes through the school, but the school doesn't pass through them. So the main idea behind this is that as much as learners are being subjected to social studies, as much as they are trying to learn the terms, things that are being discussed in social studies should also be passing through the learners. That is the main idea we're trying to talk about. Now, what are the learning outcomes we have for this particular unit? At the end of this lesson, you should be able to do the following. One, explain the philosophical background of social studies in Nigeria. Two, you should be able to explain how social studies help Nigeria achieve the goals contained in the national policy on education. Now, those are the two main learning outcomes, or we'll call them objectives, that we're concerned about in this class. Now, let's talk about the philosophical background of social studies. The first thing we'd like to say is that what is philosophical background? We'll say the philosophical background of something. What is philosophical background? The very simple language will say that philosophy means the belief or the basic beliefs, ideas, and reasons behind something. What's your philosophy of life? In the previous class, I've asked you that question that we all have our own philosophies to life. So if you ask what's your philosophy of life, that's how you view life, how you believe life is correctly supposed to be lived. That will be your own philosophy of life. So philosophy means the basic beliefs, ideas, and reasons behind something. We cannot say a philosophical background or of social studies. Philosophical background of social studies may refer to the major ideas and beliefs that explain why social studies is taught and what is expected to achieve in society. I mean, why social studies is taught and what social studies expected to achieve in society. So that is the philosophical background of social studies. You should note that, bear it in mind, it's not something you need to cram. You just need to know that since philosophy means the basic beliefs, ideas, and reasons behind something, then philosophical background of social study can be simply put as major ideas and beliefs that explain why social studies is taught and what is expected to, or what it is expected to achieve in the society. Now, why was social studies introduced? That's another important thing that was discussed in this material. Why was social studies introduced? Now, social studies was introduced in many countries for many reasons. And if you are able to recall what we've done in the previous units, you notice that one of the main thing or the main reason, if you are to narrow everything down to a kind of a summary, we will be able to summarize it all that most of those countries actually embrace social studies because of challenges they were facing. They were having some societal challenges and difficulties and problems that made them to embrace social studies. Amongst some of those problems and challenges are conflict, discrimination among citizens, poor citizenship, environmental problems, unemployment, political problems, cultural misunderstanding, and even lack of national unity. Now, when those countries or some of these countries notice some of these things, uh, you know, occurring, they look for a way of solving that social problem or those social problem, and that's how most of them find themselves embracing the concept of social studies. Some of them actually were against the motion from the very beginning, but eventually since they saw the need for it, they had to embrace it. Now, the idea was that schools could help prepare young people to understand, some of these problems that I have highlighted earlier, like conflict, discrimination, poor citizenship, environmental problems, unemployment, political problems, cultural misunderstanding, and so on and so forth. School will help the learners or the young people to understand what these problems, you know, means or what they meant, and actually contribute how they, the learners, the young ones, can contribute to solving those problems. Now, just as we have a community facing a very serious problem, probably tribal discrimination, or probably they are fighting among each other. We have neighbors fighting neighbors, destruction of public properties, and even poor sanitation. Now, when we have these challenges in the particular community, instead of teaching the children only mathematics and English, social studies will help them understand what causes these problems. Why are we having tribal discrimination in our society? Why are we fighting among ourselves? Why do we destroy public property? And they will know why do we have poor sanitation in our society or in our community. And they also learn through social studies. Social studies will also help them to understand how they, when I say they now, those earlier mentioned, problems such as tribal discrimination and so on and so forth, how those problems affect the society. And of course, to also help them to understand what can citizens do to solve those problems. That is why social study is a very good subject. I mean, it's a the philosophy behind it is very, 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 very useful to the society, to the nation. So when we have challenges in the society that relate to human relationships, and that has to do with human relations or relationship. What social study does is it helps the learner, the young ones, to be able to dig deep into the root of the problem, how the problem is affecting the society, and how to solve the problem. Now, the school does not operate separately from the society. You should know that the school is actually part of the society. The school is in a society. So the school is not in the bush or, somewhere far from the society. It's inside or within, sorry, it's within the society. So the family may teach a child good behavior, but the school also has a responsibility to develop that same child into a responsible member of the society. Uh, as a result of that, the curriculum for social studies should help learners develop knowledge, skills, attitude, good habits, values, and of course, appreciation of other people. We've mentioned that in the previous class, that the curriculum of social study, the perfect curriculum for social studies should capture knowledge, skills, attitudes, good habits, values, and of course, appreciation of other people. Now, we have four important areas social studies develops. When we're talking about the development of social studies, it covers four different areas. Four different areas. And I would like to highlight them one by one. Uh, According to our material, we have four of them. One is self-realization. The areas in which social studies uh, develops, I mean, important areas in which social studies develops. We want to look at them one by one. We at least, based on the material, we have four of them, and we would like to look at the four of them critically so that we'll be able to understand what the material is saying. Where you can eventually go through the material for reading it. I have gone through the reading and I've digested it just here to explain. Excuse me. So, first is The first important area where social study develops is self-realization. No, it's when we talk about self-realization, it means that helping individuals understand themselves and develop their abilities. So a learner should be able to ask, who am I? What are my abilities? And how can I become a useful person? And those are questions that self-realization helps a learner to ask him or herself. So when we say self-realization, we are trying to say that social studies help individuals, develop themselves and also develop their abilities. Now, for example, a student who discovers that she is good at leadership and communication. Now, through education, she develops those abilities and later becomes a responsible community leader. That is self-realization and actualization. The second important area where social study develops is in human relationships. First is self-real. It helps the learner, the pupils, to realize who they truly are. And secondly is human relationships. So this means learning how to live peaceably and cooperate with other people. Now, it involves tolerance, respect, cooperation with others, communication, understanding cultural differences. That is what human relationships entails. I know if you want to relate to someone, you definitely need to tolerate the person, respect the person. That's why we say respect is reciprocal. You have to cooperate with the person. And of course, communication is one of the most important things in any form of relationship. And finally, you have to understand cultural differences. We are not from the same culture. So we have some, the similarities. So let's assume we have three students now, just trying to explain human relationship and the things it involves when we're talking about tolerance, respect, cooperation, communication, and the understanding cultural difference. If you have three students, let's say Musa, that's an Hausa uh, boy. Chinedu, that is an Igbo boy. And if you say Tunde, we are talking about a Yoruba boy. Now, social study teaches them all together that although they come from different backgrounds, they are all Nigerians and should respect one another. So no difference is not equals enemy. The fact that this one is Igbo doesn't make him an enemy of the Hausa, or does the fact that this one is Hausa doesn't make him an enemy of the Yoruba. So social study helps to create the picture that differences doesn't does not naturally translate to enemy or enmity. Differences doesn't naturally translate to enmity, that the fact that we are different doesn't mean you are my enemy. No. Instead, social study will help them to understand that differences plus understanding with respect equals to peaceful society. When we embrace our differences and we live in understanding and respect each other, we are going to have a peaceful society. That is what social study will help the learner to, understand. So we're saying we have four important areas social study develops. We've talked about two now. We said the first one, self-realization. The second one, human relationships. Now, the third one, economic efficiency. Social study develops in economic efficiency. And what does that mean? It means that helping people, social study helps people to understand how to use available resources wisely and become economically productive. I think this is one important thing we need in Nigeria. Social study in the aspect of economic efficiency helps people understand how to use available resources wisely and become emotionally productive. So, for example, now learners may study things like occupation, production, resources, trade, agriculture, entrepreneurship, management of resources, and so on and so forth. So, if, for instance, a community has a okay, sorry. If, for example, we have that a community has a fertile land, but depends entirely on food brought by or maybe traders from other town. Social study can help learners understand that you have land, you labor with knowledge, you have agricultural production, and then you have employment and even income. So when we have fertile land, we should cultivate the fertile land to produce agricultural products. And that is going to even create employment. It reduces our rate of unemployment and also gives us source of income. So that is what social study will help them to see. Instead of them having the land that is fertile and just empty and uncultivated, it's helped them to see, of course, the opportunity in that situation. So that is number three, uh, importance of or important way in which social study develops. Social study also develop in the aspect of civic responsibility. When we talk about civic responsibility, I am not talking outside the material. Everything I'm saying is right in the material, but I'm not just interested in reading the word for word like we normally do. You go through the reading yourself. Just use this explanation to buttress what you are reading. So number four is civic responsibility. It's right there in the material. Now, civic responsibility means knowing and performing one's duties as citizens. Knowing your duties and also performing them. For example, what are the duties? It's the civic responsibilities one has as a citizen of a nation. Of course, you obey laws, you vote responsibly. When you are up to the voting age, you vote. You protect public property. Don't be in the gang of destroying properties. Now, you should be able to pay taxes where applicable and also respect other citizens, participate in community development projects, and that is how to pay your civic responsibility. You play it very well. Now, assuming we have a citizen that sees somebody damaging the public street light, for example, or probably you yourself, you are walking on the road and you saw something like that, somebody uh, damaging street light. It's very easy for you to say nothing concern me. Uh, it's not my father's light. Like we have that mentality in Nigeria, and that's really it's really destroying a lot of things. So you see somebody damaging the government property, as we call it, or we can just say the community or the public property. And somebody is destroying the street light in your area. You are seeing it like this, that this person is damaging this thing. Uh, if you are a responsible citizen that have been through social studies and social study has developed the civic responsibility in you, you will note that, or you will know that the street light belongs to all of you in that area. So, since it belongs to all of you, you will not join the person in destroying it. You will not join the person in destroying that street light. And that's civic responsibility. So you may even try to, probably if the person is an angry person, or we don't know why somebody will just decide to be destroying the public properties, but you may even try to pacify the person, or even maybe call the police on the person. Somebody is destroying the public property here. That's civic responsibility. You see yourself responsible for your community, your society. Now, what does social studies study? It's another thing we need to learn. What are the things social study? It's when we talk about social study, it basically deals with human beings and their relationship with their physical and social environment. That's just the simplest way we can put social study. Social study is, the study of human beings and their relationship with their physical and social environment. So let's take, for instance, we have human being relating with other people, a human being relating with other people. And when we talk about other people, we're talking about family, community, institutions, and of course, government. And we have relationship with physical environment in terms of land, your relationship with water, your relationship with natural resources that are available in your vicinity. So those are the things we look forward to. Now, social studies therefore examines relationship between people and other people, government and of course people and government institutions, people and goods and services, and people and the environment. Now, social study also study how we can meet basic human needs. And what are those basic human needs we have? Food, clothing, and shelter. Those are the basic human needs we have. Social studies studies how we can meet those needs. So, for example, if a farmer should produce food, a trader distributes them, then we have consumers that will buy those goods. Then government provides roads that make transportation of those goods possible. Now, social studies will examine how all these activities are connected in relationship to humans. A farmer produces the food, a trader distributes it, sells, consumers buy it, government, make roads and access routes for transportation to be possible. Social study will help you to study or examine how or the interrelatedness of all of these processes. Now, we also talk about cultural heritage, that social studies studies cultural heritage. Also say social studies studies cultural heritage. Now, what are we trying to say? So, social studies study culture. That's what we're trying to say. And when we talk about culture, we talk about language, like the food people eat, beliefs, their festivals, their customs, their values, traditions, and their dressing style, and all those stuff. Those are culture. So, culture does not remain completely unchanged. So in the past now, we have people mainly communicated through letters. If you read your NOU 107, when we talk about the time of correspondence stage, when they use letters to both to learn and also to teach. Now, even though culture seems to be constant, but it's not totally unchanged, because before, while people use letters to communicate, now we have communication through WhatsApp, email, video calls and social media and so on and so forth. Why? Culture hasn't really been altered, but it's not like it has changed, like it's now out of it. Communication is actually still taking place. But when we add cultural heritage plus changes occurring in the society, we will also have culture. Now, you as a teacher, you are the builder of citizens. We've mentioned something similar to that. That thing was repeated here, that you as a teacher, teachers are builders of citizens. Now, the social studies teacher has an important responsibility, and the teacher is expected to help produce people who will be able to, or who are patriotic, responsible, tolerant, informed, cooperative, socially responsible, and so on. Now, when we say patriotism versus citizenship, there are two different things, because we said that social studies should be able to produce patriotic, citizens. Now, when we talk about patriotism and citizenship, let's debate on the two of them. They are two related concepts, but actually different. Now, let's try to give them it's the simplest meaning we can try to attach to them. For patriotism, we can say patriotism means loving and being committed to one's country. Loving and being committed to one's country. That is patriotism. While citizenship involves the rights, duties, and responsibilities of belonging to that particular country. So let's say someone shouts, Nigeria is my country, I love Nigeria. Of course, that is a patriotic Nigeria. That is patriotism. And if that same person should say, should now destroy public property, break laws, encourage or encourages corruption, then that person is not a responsible citizen of that country. So that is citizenship, sense of responsibility to a nation, citizenship. While patriotism is just, the kind of love, commitment that you have. Is not that one is not a responsibility, it's just a commitment, the love, the passion you have for your country. Mm, Now, another thing social study helps to do is it helps understand or it helps the understanding of diversities or diversity. Now, social study teaches learners that the world contains people with different cultures, religions, different languages, different histories, different beliefs and experiences. So, students should learn how to live with people who may be different from them. You shouldn't take differences as a sign of insecurity, no, or as a means of insecurity. Now, Nigeria contains hundreds of ethnic and linguistic groups. So a learner must understand that, someone does not need to speak my language, eat my food, or share my culture or cultural background before I respect him or her. We are all Nigerians. So it means that social study promotes national integration. It integrates all of us into the sense of nationality, not just my tribe, my culture, my ethnic group, or anything. No, we are all Nigerians. Mm, we will also say that social studies is open-ended. What does this mean? When I say something is open-ended, it means social studies is open-ended because it actually accommodates new and important social issues. For example, many years ago, teacher concentrate on family, traditional institution, farming, and citizenship. But today, we now have teacher concentrating even more on cybercrime, climate change, drug abuse, social media behavior, kidnapping, unemployment, electoral violence, and gender issues and even environmental pollution. And why is this happening? It's because the society keep changing. The society is dynamic, it's not constant. So the society keeps changing, so is the method and approaches to social studies. So social study is open-ended. It's not something that is already, this is a pattern we have to be following forever. No, it keeps adapting to the changes in the society. Now, social studies integrate different areas of knowledge. Uh, is not self-dependent. Social study is not a subject that is solely dependent on itself. It borrows knowledge from different disciplines. Now we have examples. Social studies borrow knowledge from history, what happened in the past, it's also borrowed from geography, where do people live and how does the environment affect them. It borrows from economics, that is how are resources produced and distributed. It borrows from political science, how is the society governed. It also borrows from sociology, and that is to help understand how people interact in society. It borrows from anthropology, which is how cultures and societies develop. Now, when you bring all this together, you have social studies. Let's take, for instance, if you are treating a topic that say flooding in Lagos, for instance, flooding in Lagos. In social study, the teacher can examine the following: the geography, where does flooding occur in Lagos? Economics is what properties and businesses are affected. The government is what should authorities do? Under sociology, you will ask the question, how does flooding affect families? And under environment, you will ask, what role does waste disposal play in the flooding, you know, uh, issue. Now, this is why social studies is described as an integrated subject. It integrates other fields, other disciplines into it. It's not a self-dependent discipline. Now, when you are preparing your learners for a changing world, since the world is ever dynamic, always changing, let's consider Nigeria 30 years ago and compare it to Nigeria today. Many changes have occurred, like changes in technology, politics, communication, banking method, education, transportation, but business. Just mention any type of change you can imagine that is ongoing in our current world. Now, for example, in banks now, before people depend heavily on physical banking halls. You have to be there, join the queue. But today we have things like ATM, USSD on your phone, mobile banking on the mobile app, even fintechs like OPay, PalmPay, and the rest of them. We even have digital wallets now, and so on and so forth. Why? Social studies must always be dynamic so that it helps people also prepare learners to understand and cope with these changes. So the more the world changes, the more social study prepares the learners for the changing world. So one major philosophy of social studies is preparing learners for effective living in a rapidly changing society. The world, the society is rapidly changing. They also need the skill to be able to adapt to those changes when they occur. So producing an integrated individual is another concern of social studies according to Manner, producing, an integrated individual. Now, the philosophy of social studies is not necessarily to produce social studies teachers alone. Instead, it aims to produce responsible individuals regardless of their professions. A learner may eventually become a doctor, a teacher, engineer, trader, politician, banker, mention them, farmer, programmer, or anything. But social studies expect that individual should remain socially responsible regardless of what you eventually become. Yes, now that you are in primary school, you're actually learning social studies, and you may eventually grow up and become a doctor, a lawyer, a nurse, an engineer, or anything. Regardless of the field you eventually find yourself, social studies remains committed to making sure you are socially responsible, economically productive, and also politically responsible. Now, a doctor who is medically brilliant but accepts bribes before treating emergency patients lacks important social values. That is where social study comes in. So a politician who is highly educated but steals public funds lack civic responsibility, and so on and so forth. So mm, there is this other thing here. I don't know if I should go into that now. Which one talk about relationship between oh, excuse me. Now we have, of course, we have the spiral and concentric nature of social studies curriculum. Spiral and concentric nature of this of social studies curriculum. Uh, the social study curriculum is developed using spiral or concentric approach. What does this mean? It means that learners study concept gradually from simple to more complex, from their immediate environment to a wider environment. For instance, you may start uh, teaching a young child about myself, like teaching the child about him or herself. Then you move to my family. Then gradually you move to my school. Then before you know, you move to my community, my local government, my state. Then you teach them about Nigeria, even Africa, then the world. Why is this happening? Because social study is concentric in nature. It's a spiral and concentric approach that is being used in teaching social study. So the child can remember me, family, school, community, state, Nigeria, world at large. So that's something we call the concentric approach. Now, the next thing we have here is relationship, between the philosophical background of social studies and the realization of the objectives of Nigeria's national policy. Now, Nigerian national policy on education expects education to help integrate individuals into what? Society and develop responsible citizenship. It aims at building a free and democratic society for everyone, a just and egalitarian society, a united, strong, and self-reliant nation, a great and dynamic economy, a land of bright and full opportunities for all citizens. Now, we should look at each of them one by one. We should study each of them one by one so we understand what they're trying to say when they say a free and democratic society. So let's see what we have here when we say a free and a democratic society. What does that mean, or what does it represent? Democracy requires citizens to understand their rights, their responsibilities, elections, tolerance, freedom, rule of law, all those things that guide us in society. So social study teaches these ideas to them. So, for example, now let's say during an election, two students support different candidates. Democratic behavior means I can disagree with your political choice without fighting you. That is what we're trying to say about being a free and democratic society. So, political education plus tolerance plus participation equals to stronger democracy. That is what we're trying to bring out. Now, the second one is building a just and egalitarian society. Now, an egalitarian society, of course, is one where people are treated fairly, and are given reasonable opportunities without unfair discrimination. Without unfair discrimination. So, in what way does social study integrate that? Of course, social study teaches us equality, justice, dignity, tolerance, and even respect, and so on and so forth. So, if a teacher, for example, a teacher should not say something like, students from this tribe are naturally more intelligent. It's not good. You shouldn't say that as a teacher in the class. Say students from Yoruba tribe are naturally more intelligent than the Hausas. No, it's not safe in the classroom or even anywhere. So such discrimination contradicts social studies and social studies values. Instead, you can just say every individual deserves dignity and fair treatment. That is what social study teaches. Now, the third one says building a united, strong, and reliant nation. Why do I keep saying reliant? So, building a united, strong, and self-reliant nation. Uh, Social study encourages national unity, cooperation, skills development, national identity, peaceful coexistence. All those things helps in building a united, strong, and self-reliant nation. For example, students from different ethnic groups cooperate to complete maybe a community sanitation project. So the teachers teaches them through that project, cooperation, unity, stronger community equals stronger nation. So those are the things, and that's a way social study, impart the learners. The fourth one said building a great and dynamic economy. How does social study comes into this? It teaches learners about natural resources, human resources, occupation, production, conservation, and things like economic activities and so on. So let's assume that a community has a fertile land, unemployed youth, water supply. Instead of remaining unemployed, youth can learn to use, these resources productively. So resources plus skills plus proper management we call economic development. When the resources are there and we have the skills to maintain them and then we properly manage them, we will have economic development in that community. So social studies indirectly contribute to economic growth. And I think the fifth one said creating opportunities for all citizens. Creating opportunities for all citizens. It says a land of bright and full opportunities for all citizens. Now, what does that mean? Or how does social study comes into this? Social studies encourages values, especially values like dignity of labor, responsibility, hard work, cooperations, fairness, and so on. So when we talk about dignity of labor, we are trying to say that it means that every legitimate occupation deserves respect. Every legitimate occupation you find yourself doing deserves respect. For instance, a cleaner, farmer, mechanic, lecturer, and doctor perform different jobs, but each contributes to the society. Therefore, students should not develop the attitude, this job is beneath me. Instead, legitimate labor deserves dignity. They should know that once this is a legitimate labor, it deserves respect. So that's, that orientation or mentality is very, very strong in Nigeria. They finish their school, and because there is no job, they just remain seated, doing nothing, because they felt like, how will I be teaching after 4 years in university? How will I do this job after this? Why? So that is it. They should know that once this is a legitimate labor, it deserves dignity. They should be taught right from the beginning. They should know that I can't do this job, I can't do this job. And some of them remain poor, they remain, unemployed for long. So, important values that emphasized by Nigerians' educational philosophy. The national philosophy on education emphasizes values such as respect for human dignity. So every human being deserves respect. Example, you do not mock a person because the person has any disability, probably disability in the eye, in the leg, in the nose, or anything, or because of a tribal difference or financial condition or their background. You don't mock people for those reasons. Why? Social studies, based on the national policy, teaches respect for human dignity. Also, it's, of course, teaches the ability to make rational decisions. Learners should be able to, should learn to think before acting. They should be rational in their actions. For example, let's assume that a message appears on uh, a student WhatsApp, and the message says, government has cancelled all examinations tomorrow. Forward quickly. A rational person will not just go straight to forwarding it. That's the thing that happens with all these people that just keep sending all this phishing link and all this. You know, you wonder why some of them are like that. You saw a notification and instantly you want to be the first person to start announcing it around. You have not even checked. So a rational person will not immediately forward that kind of message. He's going to question it. He's going to, be philosophical in his approach. He's going to ask who published it. Is the source official? Is it from an official newspaper or just a rumor? Is there evidence? What are the evidences? So that's what we mean by rational decision making. And of course, we have moral values in human relationship. We have moral values in human relationship. This is where we are treating now. We have moral values in human relationship. And what does that mean? When we say we have moral values in human relationship, what are those moral values in human relationship? We have things like honesty, being kind, fairness, respect, responsibility, and so on. Now, we also have shared responsibility for the common good. Everyone has some responsibility to play for making the society a better place. So if a classroom becomes dirty, for instance, and students are aware of that, they shouldn't, just be of the opinion that it is the cleaner's responsibility. it is the cleaner's problem. If the cleaner like, they should come and clean it. If they like, they should leave it like that. They should know that they are the ones sitting in a dirty place. That the one like having a better community is a shared, everyone will contribute. Let's not say this thing is somebody's own, concern or somebody's own wahala or problem. So try to that maintaining a good environment is actually a shared responsibility. That's one thing they should know. You should teach them. So they should have respect for the dignity of labor. Every legitimate work deserves respect. We mentioned that earlier. Then physical, emotional, and psychological development. Of course, education should contribute to the overall well-being of the learner and not just their merely examination performance. So, uh, okay. I think after this part, we're almost done with the material. Okay, we have some notes to look at here before the self-assessment. Now, what the note that's is between that last part we've done and the self-assessment is just trying to connect social studies objectives with national goals. It's trying to connect the dots, connecting social studies objectives with the national goals. So we can just say, for instance, social study teaches democracy and citizenship. What can it produce in the citizen? It produces responsible voters. And how does it support the national goals? Free democratic society. We have done something of that nature already. So let's take an example. Suppose a teacher teaches the student on environmental pollution, maybe natural resources, conservation of energy, waste management, and so on. Learners may understand why they should avoid dumping refuse in drainage. They may learn planting of trees, learn why they should plant trees. They may learn why they should protect the water sources, and also even learn how to use resources wisely. So that is the idea. That is the idea. So we should note this that social studies alone cannot solve every problem in Nigeria. That's an error if you think that is the case. So social study alone cannot solve every problem in Nigeria. Other subjects, institutions, and social agencies also have roles to play. Therefore, we can say that social studies does not single-handedly achieve Nigeria's national goals. Rather, achieving social studies objectives contributes towards achieving those national goals. Now, think of it this way: social studies plus other subjects, plus family, plus government, plus community, plus better citizens, give us national development. Mm, so let's talk about the relationship between education and society. Now, a country's education system should reflect what the society needs. So if Nigeria needs unity, responsible leadership, peaceful coexistence, economic development, democratic citizens, and so on, then schools should teach knowledge, values, and skills that can produce these outcomes that the nation is projecting. So that is why there is a very close relationship between social studies philosophy and, of course, the Nigerian national goals. Hmm. So, if I are to talk about the major features of the philosophical background of social studies, we can use the mnemonym, the SHEC. That is, she will say check. SHEC. That should be check. And what does that mean? It means self-realization, human relationship, economic efficiency, and civic responsibility. Let me try to write here and see if you will be able to, understand what I'm trying to say. So what I'm saying is, if we are actually talking about, I want to believe that you will be able to see what I'm typing. If we are talking about the major features of the philosophical background of social studies in Nigeria, we are talking about Sheik. And what do we mean by Sheik? Sheik in this sense, you see what I'm saying? So we'll say that S stands for what? S stands for self-realization. We're just trying to revise now. Self-realization. Of course, the H stands for what? If S stands for realization, sorry, self-realization, the H will stand for human relationship. Human relationship. Relationship. Then we have another important thing there, which is E. E is economic efficiency based on your material. Economic efficiency. And the last thing we have there under check, using the check formula, we have civic responsibility. Of course, C stands for civic responsibility. So, responsibility. So that is, or those are the four basic philosophical background of social studies in Nigeria. These are the four. And in the form of summary, we said for national objectives, sorry, for the objectives of Nigeria's national policy on education, we have free and democratic society, just and egalitarian society, united, strong, and self-reliant nation, great and dynamic economy, of course, land of bright and full opportunities for all citizens. So that's all we have done in this part of the course, and I believe that we have done justice to this philosophical background of social studies in Nigeria. In the next class, we are going to Unit 4, where we will talk about social studies and other disciplines. Social studies and other disciplines. Don't forget, we've mentioned in this class that social studies alone, cannot solve every problem Nigeria is facing. So it needs to, of course, collaborate with other disciplines in order to solve the problems effectively. And this is where we end the class tonight. Thank you for your time and hope you enjoyed. When you watch it, if you have any questions or challenges, just message me on WhatsApp. We'll iron that out. Do enjoy the rest of your day and have a wonderful week.